Human Development Report 1992, presented by Nayanaka Ghosh. I'd like to begin with a quote from the Human Development and Capability Association. It is possible to be free while starving to death at the same time. This line challenges how we usually think about freedom. We often see freedom as the ability to make our own choices and to live without interference. But that kind of freedom doesn't mean much if people don't have the food or health care that they need to survive. This is where market liberalism comes in, the idea that markets work best without government interference. From this view, freedom means the right to buy, sell, and trade as we choose. But what good is this kind of freedom if it leaves millions without the basics that they need to live? The Human Development Report of 1992, published by the United Nations Development Programme, challenges this narrow idea of freedom. Its central message is simple: economic markets should serve people, not the other way around. As the report puts it, markets are the means, human development is the end. While open markets can create progress, the report warned that they often leave poor nations behind. Developing nations face high tariffs, unfair trade rules, and heavy debt, barriers that help wealthy nations grow while others struggle to catch up. In response, the report calls for a global partnership that combines open trade with people-centered growth, where freedom means more than just economic independence. True freedom, it argued, is the ability to live with dignity and choice. Although the 1992 report didn't propose specific programs, it inspired major efforts to help developing nations. One example is the Highly Indebted Poor Countries Initiative, or HIPC, launched in 1996 by the IMF and the World Bank. Its goal was to help the world's poorest nations manage their debt so they could invest more in health and education and poverty reduction instead of using most of their budget to repay loans. Before this initiative, many countries were spending more on debt payments than on essential services. HIPC gave them some relief, reducing debt and freeing up funds for development. However, the results were very mixed. Many countries were excluded because of strict eligibility rules, and even where it did work, debt relief couldn't fix deeper problems like weak governance and unfair trade. So while HIPC was a step forward, it didn't change the global systems that made these countries so vulnerable in the first place. This uneven success reflects a broader pattern in the global economy. The same policy can produce very different outcomes depending on a country's level of development. The 1992 report warned about this imbalance, and we can see it very clearly when comparing Bangladesh and China. In the 1970s, wealthy countries introduced trade quotas under the multi-fiber arrangement to protect their own textile industries. This limited imports from developing nations, making it hard for countries like Bangladesh to compete. Even when the quotas were slowly lifted by 2005, the process was end-loaded, meaning the biggest markets stayed closed until the very end. For Bangladesh, this delay was devastating. Garments made up most of its exports, yet it remained locked out of many major markets for years. Even after quotas were lifted, it struggled to compete because it relied so heavily on imported fabrics and foreign technology. That meant that only about a quarter of its export value was actually produced domestically. China's experience, however, was very different. Long before trade was liberalized, China had invested heavily in infrastructure, factories, and financial networks. So when the restrictions were finally removed, China was ready and it captured a massive share of the global market. Both countries saw growth, but the benefits were not equal. In Bangladesh, the garment industry created millions of jobs, especially for women, but profits went to foreign investors and working conditions were often harsh. In China, the boom brought huge economic gains, but also long hours, low wages, and environmental costs. So how do we measure success? Usually we look at GDP or export growth, but as both Bangladesh and China show, these numbers don't tell the whole story. Economic growth does not always mean better lives for people. We see the same messages from the report echoed in research here at University of Windsor. Dr. Jessie Sala Obadiah's project, Mobilizing Canadian Knowledge on Natural Resource-Based Development in Africa, explores how African countries can use their natural resources for fair and sustainable growth. Like the 1992 report, his work focuses on putting people first, promoting local involvement and transparent governance. It's a reminder that true progress happens when economies serve people, not the other way around. We can make a difference by staying informed, choosing fair and sustainable products, and supporting companies that act responsibly. We can also stand in solidarity with global efforts that promote fair trade and sustainable development. Here is a QR code that can be scanned for further reading links, and these are my sources.